In my Writing 121 class, we have been investigating the topic of disability studies. For our exploratory research project, I was interested in exploring how we can alter our special education systems in order to make them best support the social and academic well-being for all students of all abilities. After looking through many sources and reflecting on experiences of my own, I came to the proposition that when students with disabilities are integrated into typical classroom settings, their life skills are boosted and collaboration from all teachers and peers is successful and beneficial to all. In special education, there are many stakeholders. A major factor in the outcome of the programs and education these students receive is the decision-making made by districts and the educators they employ. Growing up in public education has a major effect on children. I know it did to me. Being surrounded by such a diverse community of different genders, race, abilities, ethnicities, and many more ways, I learned how to interact with all kinds of people. When people in communities are living in the same environment, it gives them such a unique opportunity to learn from each other. Public educators are on the forefront of this topic because private schools, at least in my hometown, refuse to accept students with disabilities to study with them as they will not offer the resources necessary for student success. Although this is clearly taking away from the betterment of the child with a disability, I think it also is harmful to the growth of all students and teachers at the institution because they will not incorporate innovative ways of learning from different perspectives. Special education allows children to do their best, embrace their differences, and even feel empowered by them. A superintendent's goal should be to strive for all their students and others in the community to thrive in every aspect of life. To help broaden my knowledge of this topic, I looked at multiple scholarly and peer-reviewed sources to educate myself. Before I dive in, I want to highlight the main disabilities encountered in schools that people can fall on a spectrum of. Some students live with behavioral disorders, which are a pattern of disruptive behaviors that cause problems at school, home, and in social situations. Others live with learning disabilities, which are disorders that affect the ability to understand or use spoken and written language, do mathematical calculations, and coordinate movements. Patricia Stanley wrote an article on the differences in depression and self-esteem as reported by learning disabled and behavior disordered middle school students. It illustrates their perspectives of themselves and how being quote-unquote different has had a negative impact on their mental health. After conducting a study of 61 students who either had learning disabilities or behavioral disorders, it was found that they have poor social skills and relationships with peers. These struggles are due to their inability to correctly interpret relationships as positive and present inappropriate behavior with their peers. In addition, due to academic difficulties, both of these groups experience lower self-esteem and levels of depression that are higher than typical students their age. This article highlights the issues students are currently living with as a result of their disabilities, and if it is not addressed, there can be harmful long-term effects. The next source I examined was from author Rosemary Kolstad, who discussed how school districts have been developing programs for their learning disabled students and determine how and why inclusion placement options are successful for middle school age students in her article titled Inclusion Programs for Learning Disabled Students in Middle School. It is said that most teachers will have a learning disabled student in their classes at all times, and it is important to identify them in order to ensure that they are eligible for the resources and services that they need to succeed. Teachers can be trained to incorporate strategies into their teaching that support alternative learning processes. As Kolstad said, if the learning disabled student is better at doing something rather than writing about it, a video camera can be on hand for book reports and projects. However, she also brought up the importance of special education classes because sometimes regular settings do not help meet students' needs. In the article, The Social Model of Disability by author Tom Shakespeare, he introduces the British social model of disability, which, in part with the group called Union of Physically Impaired Against Segregation, had a goal of replacing segregated facilities and giving people with impairment the opportunity to participate in society in the same ways non-disabled people do, by doing things like living independently, undertaking productive work, and being in complete control of their lives. They believed that through developing connections, a community for mutual support, self-awareness, social conditioning, media representation, economic policies, the formation of social groups, and social conditioning, we could get to a place of liberation. The organization and website called GALE explained the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990, also known as IDEA, and how its implementation supports the education of youth living with disabilities in the education system. This act requires the opportunity to receive free special services that resemble regular school settings while having varying programs to meet individual and specific needs of each special student. Educators in school districts have the ability to determine what kind of help a student needs and how they will receive it. Authors Stephanie Reach and Allison Starks put together an article talking about the barriers and enablers for teaching with technology in special education. School districts receive funding that go towards specialized teachers and technology to help assist students. When students are integrated into classrooms, depending on the severity of their disability, they can be accompanied by a paraeducator who sits with them in class and helps them to participate. When communicating with learning disabled and behavioral disabled students, technology systems have been introduced. Technology often connects with special education through assistive technology by using systems like text-to-speech and smart pens. Assistive technology is beneficial for students and educators, and after a national survey was conducted, it was found that these programs are underutilized for the largest special education student population, those living with high incidence disabilities. I am particularly interested in this topic because I went through public school for 12 years and had many classes with students who had many different forms of disabilities. I saw how they were treated by everyone and how their path to learning was structured differently. I participated in unified sports, which created close relationships between me and my classmates who lived with autism and Down syndrome. They are very special to me, and the bonds I have with them are unlike any other friendship. I wanted to investigate whether the way they were taught in school was fruitful and ethical in giving them the best opportunities possible. School districts and educators should be interested in this topic because they have the responsibility to create an education system of students who are thriving and performing to the best of their ability. In my research, it was difficult to find a perfect system of integration that is in place for students with disabilities and primary sources of students and their direct emotions and feelings towards the topic. You, in the audience, might face challenges when trying to take matters into your own hands and help your community. If you want to find ways to help students, you can volunteer in the community programs or attend unified athletic events, for example. Getting involved is the first step. Throughout my research process, I shifted from being just pro-integration to being an advocate for specialized classes as well, but only to a certain extent. I have come to the conclusion that while assuming people with disabilities are less capable than others and need to be treated differently in order to thrive and survive, it needs to be recognized that there are diverse capabilities within the disabled community and that the implementation of inclusive practices where students all have the chance to learn, contribute, and thrive regardless of their abilities is necessary. I place the responsibility of districts to reflect on the programs they have available and for the greater community to reflect on how they interact with their peers and students with different abilities in an effort to better educate themselves and others on the new ways we can thrive and learn together.